Hey everyone, welcome to the Building Excellence Podcast. We've got Jared Gallagher with us today. So Jared, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of give us some background and some details about growing up and your backstory and some of the experience that helped shape you along the way.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because we kind of grew up in parallel lives. Your dad and my dad um, were best friends and have always been best friends. I grew up in the Tulsa area in Owasso. Was born in Plano, Texas. We only lived there for a few months, and then when mom and dad moved back, I came along with them and grew up in the Tulsa area for most of my life. Went to Owasso High School, graduated from there in 2007. Went to Oklahoma State, spent a little too much time there, and had too much fun in Stillwater, as I think we all did. But got out of there safely and without harm, and with a degree. That's kind of the beginnings. And right now, I live in Oklahoma City. I have I guess you could say, a variety of jobs and hobbies, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. But in Oklahoma City right now, and with my lovely wife Carolyn of about 7 months now, so newlywed, and things are just going really fast and exciting, and I'm happy that we're all kind of on this side of 2020. So
Yeah. You guys got to experience the getting married throughout COVID, so that was always a fun experience.
brutal.
I'm sure
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
we could talk about that throughout the whole podcast, just experiencing
No
a wedding
joke.
through COVID. So, but
No joke.
we don't want to have to rehash that for you. So. Yeah, like you said, we did grow up a little bit parallel lives. Our dads are both best friends from ever since they were little. But and speaking on that, you have some amazing parents. How did they shape you to become the person that you are?
I I don't know how you can. I don't know that it's possible to overstate how important it is to have two loving, supporting parents. In your children's lives, you take it for granted growing up because that's your life and that's the norm. But when you get outside and you see all the struggles that people have gone through and all of the hurdles that people have had to jump through to get where they are, um, you're forced to take a step back and realize, hey, I lived a great life growing up and had every opportunity to do anything I wanted, and never wanted for anything. And I think that's something that I could say all the thank yous in the world every day to them, and it wouldn't be enough. And I think the best way for me to say thank you is to do that in my own life and with my own family, and kind of show them that their legacy is not, I don't know, ungrateful, of all of the
Mm.
sacrifices that they made. So, it was great family to grow up in. Not saying they weren't tough at times. As well as I do, those Jinx boys can be tough every once in a while. But I think that when you talk about excellence, they demand excellence. And my mother and father both demanded excellence, and beyond that, my extended family demands excellence, and in a supportive, loving, not afraid to fail sort of way. They'd rather give you the opportunities and let you go and try to take advantage of those, and if you fail, they're there that you can fall back on. And that's something I'm forever grateful for.
Yeah, a lot of love and support throughout the your experiences growing up. Well, you've been involved in sports, and obviously you're still involved in sports. When did you start playing sports at a young age, and is that when the kind of your natural love of athletics kicked in, or how did that come about?
Yeah, always played sports growing up. I probably started, t-ball whenever everybody started t-ball, 5 years old, whenever it was. Played uh, played a little bit of football, played a lot of basketball, but those were the three sports, that were kind of my thing. And you fall in love with sports, and you know, parents. I'm a multi generational Oklahoma State Cowboy, so we grew up going to Stillwater for games, and my icons growing up were guys like um, Brian Montanati and Desmond Mason and Bryant Reeves and Keontae Roberts, all of these Oklahoma State basketball players. And then you look Tony Lindsay on the football team and Owasso Pogai and R.W. McQuarters and so many of these guys that like I never knew, I figured I'd never meet these guys because I put them so high on a pedestal. You look back, it's like, that was a 7-5 Oklahoma State football team, but like they were my heroes at the time, and Eddie Sutton and Bob Simmons, and just I could go on and on. But going to those games and seeing the atmosphere, feeling the energy in Gallagher Iba in the late '90s, I mean, completely palpable and infectious. And so that's kind of where it all got started. I quickly realized, when I was in high school and I was playing church league basketball rather than varsity basketball, that I probably didn't have a future playing athletics. I'm a big white Irish boy, and wasn't physical enough to play on the offensive line. So
Okay.
so I kind of assumed that I wouldn't have an athletic future in that regard, but I still loved sports and they were my passion. And so I wanted to find a way to still involve myself in the game somehow, whether that be, broadcasting or what I do now, public address, whatever it is. I wanted to be involved in the game somehow. And I've developed this kind of life motto of I'd rather be getting paid to go to a game than having to pay for a ticket to go to a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
And that's worked out pretty well for the last 15 years or so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So going through high school and realizing that you maybe didn't want to be playing sports, um, how did you even did you get into being an announcing at that time, or was it more of a progression afterwards?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting story. You know, I don't know, it's probably eighth or ninth grade when I realized, I've got a different voice than most other people that I go to school with. Um, and realized that there was an opportunity there to parlay that into some things. I think my first announcing gig, I was probably in 10th grade or 11th grade, and it was announcing future Owasso Rams football game, fourth and fifth grade football games on Saturday afternoons. And they probably just needed a body to put behind a microphone. They didn't care who it was, what experience they had, whatever. But I mean, I latched onto it from there. Um, as far as like the vocal development and experience goes, I didn't know how to use my voice at all until I joined the choir my senior year. And I've always been somewhat musical. I was in the marching band for 4 or 5 years. I understood and enjoyed the theory of music and the passion you can emit when you're playing music. And so, but like I hated singing in front of people, but I'm really glad I joined the choir my senior. I was really kind of pressured into it, but it was a blast, and I ended up making all-state choir my senior year. And
Oh, really? Awesome.
yeah, and it was that kind of allowed me to find my voice and not be afraid to use it in any setting. So that's kind of where that got started. And then, by the end of my senior year of high school, I was doing Owasso high school soccer games and, doing all of the FOR games as opposed to just a handful on Saturdays. And so, that was a great experience. And I kind of knew then that that was an option for me. Fast forward a few years, I'm at Oklahoma State, and so much of this industry is, are you willing to shoot your shot? It's cold calls, it's networking, it's, more so than anything I've ever done, it's who you know more than what you know. There are a lot of guys out there who have high level public address gigs who don't have that much experience, or don't have any experience. They come in as radio jockeys or sports talk guys. They don't have any experience on the public address side, but it's who you know. And so, when I got to Oklahoma State, I just kind of shot my shot and started calling around in the athletic department. It was like, hey, there are a lot of sports on campus, and Larry Reese isn't announcing all of them.
Yeah.
He's doing football and basketball, and then maybe one or two outside of that, but he's not announcing all of them. And I know you need bodies to put in those sports. And so that's, they gave me a chance doing, softball and equestrian and some of these really small sports. And that just kind of snowballed. By the end of college, I had done 2 or 3 seasons of Oklahoma State baseball at Allie P. Reynolds Stadium, and several seasons of softball, and had, got to fill in doing a wrestling duel at Gallagher. And so I got to do all of these things, these really exciting things, all while using this, unique voice and unique talent that I had. And that's kind of snowballed and just developed for the last 14 or 15 years to get where I am today. So,
well, obviously, you were probably not a soprano in the choir, so I would, yeah,
I was not.
Yeah,
No.
but one thing I do want to hit on too, you talk about your story and about getting to know people, and kind of a big part of it is who you know. But at the same time, I definitely want to highlight that you were trying to improve your voice, trying to work and become better at the natural abilities that you had.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And that's a big key too, because not only are you working to get to know people and cold calling and just networking and getting to build relationships with others, but you're also working really hard and being diligent about getting better and improving. So I want to make sure we highlight those two things as well, because definitely a lot of it is who you know. But when you get there, have you put in the time and the preparation and the work to make sure that when you shoot your shot, like you actually are giving it the best chance of being successful as you can.
Yeah, you can get in the door, but they'll see through your crap real fast if you're not supposed to be there. So that's and with announcing, really the only way to do that is to have in-game experience, real-time game experience. And it doesn't matter what level it is. I mean, there are little league games or little dribblers games at the church, or rec league softball games. Go out there and announce. It doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't have to be at One Oak Stadium or Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark or the BOK Center. You don't need a huge audience to develop your voice. Take a tape recorder out to any ballpark or field or wherever you are. Take it out there, write down some rosters, and start working on your calls. Like, how would you announce a walk-up in baseball, or how would you announce a three-pointer in basketball? How would you announce a home three-pointer as opposed to a visiting three-pointer? I mean, those are different calls, obviously. There's so many opportunities that you don't need permission for. You can go out there. You could go to an OU or an OSU football game, bring your tape recorder or your AirPods, and just start doing it. Mimic the guys that are already doing it. There's an infinite amount of opportunities out there for what I do. And I've had a lot of younger guys in college who are trying to find their niche in sports. And that's the other thing, is people don't realize how many different opportunities there are. When you think, when you're in high school and you say, I want to work in sports, it's either A, playing, B, coaching, or C, being on ESPN. Those are the 3 jobs you think about when you're in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you don't realize that there's, a full marketing team, a full sports information team, a ticketing team who's at every game. Ticketing isn't just sitting in the office, Monday through Friday selling tickets. There's group sales, there's corporate sales, there's VIP, there's there's scoring table, there's officiating. Nobody thinks about officiating anymore.
Yeah.
You know, everybody just wants
Except
to
your
complain
dad.
about officiating. Yeah, except for Stuart Gallagher.
Yeah.
And I'm the first. I complain about officiating all the time, but there's officiating. There's a million officiating opportunities out there.
Mhm.
Um, you know, PA announcing, um, you know, front office, executive team, staff. You know, coaching staff doesn't mean just coaches. You know, they've got their own support staff, trainers, dietitians, whatever. I mean, there are so many different jobs in sports that nobody thinks about until they realize they're not going to be on ESPN, or they're not going to be the next head coach of whatever team they love. Um, so, you know, I think it's honing your craft, whatever that. Well, I think first it's broadening your horizons, seeing what's out there, and seeing what. Yeah, I would have loved to be a radio play-by-play guy, but I quickly realized that that's not really my game because, um, you know, ad libbing is not my thing. You know, I'm much better when things are scripted out. I've gotten better at it, you know, because at the ballpark I ad lib 10 times more than I did whenever I started. I had to have everything scripted out down to the word, how they wanted me to say it, because I was so afraid of representing that brand in a poor light if I said something the wrong way. So I wanted everything scripted out. Now that I've been with the Dodgers for 5 years, I felt comfortable. You know, my voice is the oral brand, the audio version of what you think of when you think Oklahoma City Dodgers or Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark or, you know, Tulsa Golden Hurricane football and basketball. It's you kind of become ingrained in that brand and reputation of that team. And so, you know, part of that, and I don't want to give myself too much credit, but part of that is, you know, the way I call games. It's my tonality and my rhythm and my, you know, bravado and, you know, my deadpan when things aren't going right. There's just so many different things that go into it. And if that's not for you, it's not for you. You know, you may be better at, you know, I to me, sales is so daunting. You know, I can network all day, I can talk to anybody all day, but closing that deal, like asking somebody for their money for a product that I'm selling or a service that I'm selling, for some reason, that's always been so daunting to me. Um, but I mean, there are guys out there that are naturals at it, you know, guys and gals out there that are naturals at it. So it's just, you know, it's broadening your horizons to find what you're good at and what you think you could do, and then really honing your craft in any way you can. You know, if it's corporate sales, well, you can't just go to a ticketing office and say, hey, I want to go start selling, you know, box suites for your games, you know. But, you know, I don't know what that looks like, but find a way to, you know, work on, if that's business school, if that's selling, you know, a product or service that you love, whatever it is, find, you know, find that passion for whatever you're good at, and just find any way to hone that craft. So yeah, I mean, it's not just getting in the door, it's getting in the door and then proving to yourself and proving to the people that own that door that that you're supposed to be there and that you belong.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and one of the things too that, as you just talked about, one of the things that rings in my mind, it's be willing to do the work,
No doubt. Yeah.
right? I mean, you can't just go in there and, yeah, everyone would love to be the PA announcer of a professional basketball team, or
Right.
they'd love to be the head coach, but that does not happen like that.
No,
Excuse me. It
it doesn't.
happens. Yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't. And you know, I know it's so applicable in any facet of business or life. You know, there's stuff you don't want to do all day long. You know, I there have been games that I haven't wanted to do. There have been teams I haven't wanted to announce for, but they're opportunities, and they're opportunities not only for people to hear my voice and hear my kind of my brand of announcing, but they're opportunities for decision makers out there. You know, say there's a coach out there that loves hearing me announce, they get fired and go somewhere else. Well, who do you think they're going to call if, if they're in town at a different position? They're going to call me because they want that in their ballpark every night or whatever. So, yeah, there are definitely, I've moved up from doing future Owasso Rams football games, and it's not because I didn't like doing them at the time, but as you do those, there are bigger and better opportunities out there, but you have to be willing to do the little ones first. You have to be willing to go out there with the tape recorder to the rec league softball fields and practice, or, whatever that process is that you have to get better. You have to be willing to do that.
Yeah. And, doing, fourth and fifth grade future Owasso Rams football games, when you do those, it's not like your mindset is more, it's an opportunity. So I'm going to do a really good job of it instead of, oh, I got to do this game. I don't really want to be here.
Right.
Like that shows. So you have to make sure that you do an excellent job doing what you're supposed to do. And then obviously when you do a good job, things happen because of it. So I really like that part of your story, how you started, at some youth football games and worked your way up. And you started maybe at Oklahoma State equestrian and softball. And those are opportunities for you to get better at your craft, for people to see and hear your voice, right?
Sure.
Because then your sound becomes synonymous with, that sport, because everyone's hearing it like every at bat or whatever it might be.
Sure.
And so it's a progression for sure. And I definitely want to talk about that. And the opportunity part, you talked about seeing everything as an opportunity. And it is how we view those things. If we look at it from a negative lens, most likely it's probably not going to turn out very well. But if we view it as an opportunity in a positive way, it typically is going to turn into something positive.
Yeah, it's, I'll never forget the time that I was announcing, it's probably a sixth grade basketball game on a Saturday when I lived in Orlando, and Ray Lewis walks in to this tiny gymnasium. There's 30 people in the whole gym, and Ray Lewis, the Hall of Fame, football player from the Baltimore Ravens, comes out, and his son turns out was playing on this team that was playing the sixth grade basketball game. You talk about pressure for everybody, not just for me to, want to sound as good as possible, but also not overdo it for a sixth grade basketball game. Yeah. This is not the Orlando Magic, or the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a sixth grade basketball game on a Saturday afternoon. Pressure on the officiating crew. He started getting into the officiating crew for a few minutes, and it was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life. But he's also a very nice guy, very personable, whatever. But because of his reputation on the field, the pressure in that tiny gymnasium on a Saturday afternoon, I mean, you could have felt the top blow off of that place, because everybody got nervous. The kids got nervous. The coaches got nervous. The officiating crews, I got nervous, whatever it is. But yeah, you've got to treat pressure as an opportunity, and challenge as an opportunity as well. That it's kind of the, have I bitten off more than I can chew mentality. Maybe you have objectively, but you can't think like that, or you've already failed. And if you have bitten off more than you can chew, or if there's a moment that's too big for you, and that it's too big for you, you just got to buckle up and get it done. Take one step at a time. It may not be the best experience or most gratifying experience, but at the end of the day, you'll look back and see how far you've gone. It's the whole one step mentality. Take one step. Each step is its own success. There's a tournament that I've done a few years in Orlando. It's a high school basketball tournament in Orlando, and it's 4 days, like 32 or 36 games or something. It's like 8 games a day, elite high school basketball tournaments a day. And it's such there's 10 minutes between games. I don't even have time to get up and use the restroom.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there for 14 hours for 4 straight days, or 16 hours, or whatever it is. And it's like college coaches are there, and all of these you know, Jason Kidd was there one, you know, whoever it is. It's so like, that's a lot of announcing. And my voice, like, I can only take so many words in a day before my, you know, my voice starts to get weak, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you look back, you do 8 games a day, you get done with that first day. Okay, feel pretty good. I can do this again tomorrow. Do it again tomorrow. Well, I'm pretty tired, but we're halfway done, you know?
Hmm.
And so you just got to keep going like that. And yeah, I mean, if you treat challenges or hurdles as challenges and hurdles, you'll never succeed that way. You have to treat them as an opportunity.
Yeah, all those things are opportunities to grow, right? So one thing I want to go back and shift back into college. So you'd been announcing these games. You knew you kind of wanted to get into it a little bit. What
Right.
did that look like from after college? And actually, before we even get into after college, just talk about the relationships that you established whenever you were doing that all through college,
Yeah.
because that I don't want to skip over that as well.
So the one thing you have to realize, it wasn't just that in college. So my first year, my freshman year at Oklahoma State was fall of 2007, and I had gotten involved with the media relations team. They brought in a number of student assistants every year to help out with football games and basketball games and stuff like that, unpaid, you know, experience only. But you know, for a freshman kid in college, you got to go sit in the press box, see all of these sports writers that I've been reading my whole life for the Tulsa World or the Daily Oklahoman or whoever it was, you know, sitting down the road from Jim Traber, you know, or whoever. So like, it was a really cool experience, and something I couldn't pass up. So I had been doing that since my freshman year of college, August 2007. I did that all 5 years I was in school. And that snowballed into not just a student assistant. I got to become a sports information director for the equestrian team. I got to be on the actual stat crew for the basketball team, which led to an opportunity for statting one of the Big 12 basketball championships in Oklahoma City. So like, everything that I did snowballed from there, and kind of branched out from there. That gave me my contacts with the marketing team, who I then called to say, hey, if you ever need somebody to announce, it's something I'd like to get into. You know, I worked with the Cowboy and Cowgirl golf team, which led to an opportunity to work out at Karsten Creek while I was in school. So I was doing all of this. My senior year, my 5th year of college, I had 3 part-time jobs. I was working in media relations for games. In the mornings, I was kind of a production assistant at Stillwater Radio and TV 31 downtown, and we had a morning show. Stillwater had a morning show, and they had somebody in the studio to kind of produce the morning show. And so, you know, it was wake up at 5 a.m. for a 6 a.m. morning show on television, 8 a.m. class, you know, whatever it was, go work at Karsten from noon to 6. And then if there were any games that night, go work the games that night. So not a lot of school got done, but a lot of experience got done. And I'm so thankful for all of those experience and all those people that were willing to take a chance on me, despite all of the other stuff I had going on. And so all of that just kind of, you know, worked together to give me all of these different opportunities. I mean, we hosted a national championship when I was at Karsten Creek, which was an unbelievable experience. And kind of a clash of 2 of my worlds. You know, at Carson, my job at Carson, I worked out in a cart barn for minimum wage. You know, got to play golf at Karsten Creek, which was really cool, but it was a minimum wage job. Sweat my tail off, you know, for a couple of summers. And then in media relations, you know, you do a lot of kind of dirty work for the athletic. You know, you're statting games, or you're collating game notes, or writing game notes, taking interviews, transcribing interviews. I mean, I remember one time I transcribed Travis Ford when he got hired. I transcribed his hiring press conference, and it was like, you know, a 50-minute long press conference that I'm just typing out for hours and hours and hours, you know, which was an experience in and of itself. But at the 2011 national championships at Karsten, my worlds kind of collided there. And so what would happen was we would show up at, I think we showed up at 4:30 in the morning, um, and instantly get on the range. I'd go out to the range, start picking balls. You know, you're picking golf balls for 8 hours. Um, at lunch, I'd go in, have a bit of lunch, and then I'd go down to the media relations area in the basement of the clubhouse and work with Ryan Cameron, who's still the sports information director for men's golf at Oklahoma State. I'd work with him, help him out with quotes or whatever he needed. And so for 10 days or whatever it was, I'm working 20, 21 hours a day, you know, maybe getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep for 10 straight days. And like, I know the human body can take that. And I know there are more impressive physical and psychological feats in life. But to me, like, that was the pinnacle. Like, the fact that I survived that experience,
absolutely,
taught me so much about, like, am I tired or am I just complaining about being tired? You know what I mean? Like, there's always a next level you can get to. There's always another gear that you can get to. And I truly believe that. And that's what, you know, that's what saves Navy SEALs lives, you know, or Army Rangers lives. There's always something to move forward. And again, that next step, you know, there's always a gear you can get to beyond what you think you can do. And that's a small example of that, but for a college kid in Stillwater, like that was my, like, pinnacle of, holy cow, I'm juggling all of these different things, plus school, you know, plus, you know, a social life,
yeah.
and trying to be involved in my fraternity and student government. I was in student government a couple of semesters, and trying to juggle and balance all of these things. And it wasn't a success for a long time, but that last year, I finally, like, got some redemption there, and realize, yeah, I can push myself a lot harder than I think I can. So, yeah, that's kind of, you know, in a nutshell, how all of those things came about. And through that, you know, you show your loyalty to those people, and they're going to show their loyalty back to you. And so, you know, when I finally got out of Stillwater, I got a pretty cool internship in Orlando, which is what led me to Florida for a couple of years. Really cool internship with Florida Citrus Sports is what the organization is called. And they hosted at the time the Capital One Bowl and the Russell Athletic Bowl. And so I get to go do media relations for the bowl games and all of their events that they have for that year. So, like, it led to some amazing experience, still leading to opportunities today. I mean, anytime Karsten has a tournament out there, I get to go out and help out in some capacity. You know, anytime Larry Reese needs a fill-in at Gallagher Iba, they call me, or whatever it is. You know, I got to do a game at O'Brate Stadium this year, which was insane. You know, seeing that facility after announcing it Alley P. for a few years,
it's a little different.
It's unbelievable, the upgrade they have. But, like, all that to say, all that hard work 10 years ago is still paying off today. So if that's not motivation to just, you know, buck up and do it, you know, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and there's a lot right there that you just talked about, because that is a lot of experiences all packed into 24 hours or, you know, within whatever time it was. That's a lot of hard work too. But, you know, real quickly, I want to touch on those relationships where you say you were going to these games early on, and there are people that you admired from afar, right? Sports writers and things like that. Throughout your time doing those things, were you stepping outside your comfort zone and maybe going up and talking to these guys and saying, hey, I just wanted to say I really respect you, and kind of having some conversation and getting to know some people like that?
Yeah, I think it comes more naturally than, you know, just kind of walking up and saying, hey, I admire your work. Yeah. Now, in some instances that may have happened or may happen. And I feel much more comfortable now doing that, rather than when I was, you know, 19 years old or whatever. You don't know what you're doing when you're 19. I don't care what it is. When you're 19 years old, you don't know what you're doing. whether it's networking or your job or school or what, you don't know. So now I could go up to any of those guys now and say, hey man, really love the work you're doing. Um, you know, let's get together, have lunch or something. I'd love to learn more about your story, and how you got to where you are today. I don't know if it was that blatant when I was in school, but it, when you're in the press box with them for 6 football games and then you're on press row with them for 20 basketball games, and you see a lot of the same beat writers or whoever it is, radio guys. There's always a media workroom, and all the guys are hanging out in the media workroom before games, and we'll go in there. We stock the media workroom with Gatorades and with stat books and with game notes and whatever. And it may start out with them asking for a small favor. Hey, can you make sure that so and so comes to the interview after the game, whatever, because they may be working on a story for so and so. Well, those little things, they're going to remember that, and like, you're going to become their go-to guy or girl for anything that they need, because a lot of times they don't need to bother Kevin Clintworth, who's the head of at that time was the head of the media relations team, or Gavin Lang, who was the head of football or whatever. They don't need to bother the head honcho for a small favor or whatever. And that's kind of what we were there for. So that opened up a lot of doors into networking, seeing seeing their experiences and how they go. I mean, Sam Mays, who played football at Oklahoma State, I love the guy to death. He and I love what he's done with his career. I don't know, here in Oklahoma City, he is probably the biggest radio personality outside like a Jim Traver or something like that. But at the time, he was just trying to find what he was, wanted to do in life. And he was doing triple play sports radio in Stillwater, which is, not a big market. And now he's become one of the biggest radio personalities in Oklahoma City, which is a big market. It's a top 25 market now. So, from where we were where I was as a student, and how I've developed in my career and various professions, and also seeing how a lot of those people have advanced in their professions, is really cool to see, and to kind of keep tabs with them. Kelly Hines was I think she was a beat writer maybe for OSU basketball when I was, later in my student career. And she wasn't, she may have been 2 years older than me, and she was beat writing for OSU basketball. And now, she's doing so many different things for the Tulsa World. She's one of the top writers for the Tulsa World, top journalists. And I get to see her every day at TU basketball and TU football games, and so it's cool to kind of maintain those relationships and see, where they have come, and also realize that, like, they're just trying to get through the grind just like you are. Barry Trammell's grind is different than mine, but he's still grinding, or Jimmy Trammell or whoever it is, Bill Haston. They're all, to us as readers, they are like the pulse of sports in Oklahoma, but they're also humans, and like you get Bill Haston talking about, golf in Tulsa, he'll talk all day, or whatever it is, I mean, he's such a wealth of knowledge and wants to tell people about it, and he only gets so many words in the newspaper to do so. And so, getting to know sports journalists in particular, I think, is so important, especially if you want to be in the sports world as a profession. There are guys out there who are absolute savants with stats and with stories, and will remember the third baseman on the 1972 Tulsa Drillers team. I don't know, it's just crazy, and they can recall it like that. It's crazy stuff, but they're always great resources to have around. And yeah, it's cool now, seeing those people, because I studied sports journalism at OSU, and so they were kind of, you know, my professional. That's who I looked up to professionally. Were these people that I read their stories every day,
Hmm.
and now 10 or 15 years later, I get to work alongside them at TU basketball games and TU football games and stuff like that, and it's just really cool.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the relationship component sometimes is authentic, sometimes it's just maybe taking a step of faith outside your comfort zone to get to know somebody. But regardless of it, it's just having a genuine curiosity and learning about some people's stories or getting to know them for who they are, not what they can do for you, is a big key to that too. So you touched on after school, you went to Orlando. You work for the Citrus Bowl, or not the bowl, but the
Yeah, yeah,
organization that sets the bowl
right,
games. How did once you did that, how did you get in coming back here and obviously working? You work as the PA announcer for the Tulsa football, University of Tulsa football, and University
right,
of Tulsa basketball. You do Owasso high school football. You've worked the NCAA tournament when it's here at the BOK Center.
right.
You fill in some Oklahoma State events. I know there's plenty more,
Yeah,
but all these things that you do while you also have a job too, and you're doing all these other things that we
sure.
want to touch on. But how do those opportunities come about, and what do you do on a daily basis?
Oh, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Orlando because it was such a great experience for me. I'm very much a homebody, and I think I lean on my family more than maybe others lean on theirs. But like Orlando was an awesome experience, and I made some incredible friends. I was talking to one of my friends yesterday that I met at Orlando. In fact, so I worked outside of the internship. Once I finished that internship, I got a job with a school called the First Academy, which it was a private school affiliated with First Baptist Church of Orlando, which is the biggest church I've ever been to. I mean, just massive.
Yeah.
You think churches are big here? Go to Florida; it's crazy. Um, but um, but it was cool because it was, I grew up going to First Baptist Tulsa, and that was kind of my um, spiritual and cultural connection to Orlando, because I didn't know what to expect when I went to Orlando. When you and I think of Orlando, when Midwesterners think of Orlando or Oklahomans think of Orlando, what do you think of?
I think at Disney World.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where everybody goes. It's Disney World and Universal. And that's all I knew when I was going to Orlando. So like I I just didn't know what to expect, but there's so much more about Orlando. It's so rich in culture. There's so much to do. I mean, you're an hour from the Space Coast. Um, when I was announcing football games, I'll never forget this. I was announcing a football game one night, a high school football game, and you see this trail start coming up from the east. I didn't know what it was at first. It was a space shuttle launch. I'm sitting
Really?
there, there's football on the field, and there's a space shuttle going up into space,
Yeah.
like right at the 50-yard line. It was insane. But that's Orlando, it was really great. I met so many cool families, so many unbelievable student athletes who went to this school. One of the student athletes that graduated from TFA while I was there is actually in Oklahoma City right now. At this moment, he plays for the Reno Aces, which is the AAA affiliate for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And so, announcing the Dodgers game last night, he comes up to bat and promptly hits a triple off of the Dodgers, second inning, first at bat, and it just brought back so many memories of watching him play high school baseball. It was really cool. But that's the type of stuff I love. My past, I get to revisit my past so much because I've announced so many of these guys either at lower levels or in college, and now they're playing professionally, whatever it is. So that's really neat. So Orlando was great. I spent 3 years in Orlando, but I was feeling really homesick, and at the time, I was also feeling really burnt out in sports because I was working my job full time was to work in this athletics department for this school. But in the evenings, we would also administrate all the games, and I would announce whatever. And so I'm at the school from 8 a.m. until midnight, 7 nights a week or 6 nights a week minimum. And it was it was a really interesting experience because, cost of living is not what it is in Oklahoma. It's, you get hit with a dose of reality.
Yeah.
And, when I'm an assistant in this athletic department, high school athletic department, the majority of what I'm getting paid is going to rent every month. And so there were a lot of nights when I would just eat leftovers from the concession stand, got in good with our concessions lady, and she would let me take home all the hot dogs that we didn't sell or whatever. And so, but that was life. And guess what? That's going to be other people's experience whenever they first get into. I'm not saying that's everybody's experience. It's not by any means, but you're going to eat more concession stand food than you probably care to.
A lot of hot dogs and nachos.
A lot of hot dogs and nacho cheese. You can do so much with nacho cheese. Like you can make a Philly cheesesteak out of a hot dog. It's not just for nachos or pretzels. You can do so much with nacho cheese. I've learned.
And this is what we really want to talk about is the nacho cheese.
yeah. I'm a nacho cheese connoisseur, but
okay.
but I was really feeling homesick and just kind of casually looking for opportunities, to take a step back from full-time sports, and B, get closer to home. And I found that in an opportunity. I moved into marketing full-time, not just sports marketing, but marketing full-time. I work for an agency. I got a job with an agency here in Oklahoma City, where I ended up moving to Oklahoma City, working there for 5 years. And that was an unbelievable experience because I got to, and I know like the glamorous part of my life is the announcing, but the matter of fact is like nobody's making a full-time living just doing public address. Play-by-play radio guys, you can get away with that, especially if you're doing it for a high-level team. That's a full-time job. Public address will never be a full-time job. I do between 150 and 180 events a year, and I still can't make that a full-time job. And that's basically one event every other day, all year long, year in and year out, and I still can't make it a full-time job. So you gotta have I consider that my side gig. My real gig, I've worked in marketing for the last couple of years. Worked for an agency, and that was great because I got to experience a lot of it, different industries, everything from automotive sales to government entities, nonprofits, gaming, tourism. I mean, and any industry you can think of, we probably had an account in, and that was just a really unique learning experience. And the culture there was great. And there's so many friends from that agency that I'm still great friends with. In fact, we have like a brunch group from that agency that we go to brunch with every now and then, which is a lot of fun. But I've since transitioned. I now work. I'm the director of marketing for a company called Private Jets Incorporated, and we're a private jet charter company out of Wiley Post Airport in Oklahoma City. Been there for I think 7 or 8 months now. I started in November, so right before I got married, actually. And so that's a good time to transition full-time jobs is a month before you get married. But that's been nuts. I've always been kind of an airplane geek. I'm not smart enough to fly planes. I never will be. That's why I'm in marketing, because I'm not smart enough to do anything technical. But like my office sits over the ramp at the airport, and I get to watch all of these jets come in and out all day, and it's so cool. Like I just get lost watching jets, and my job is I get to talk about that and I get to promote that. It's so cool.
You're speaking my language. I love aviation too. So.
Dude, it's so cool. I mean, I'll never forget the very first day I came to work. And so with our company, we just built a new FBO at Wiley Post. And for those that don't know what an FBO is, it's a fixed base operator, which is basically a tiny terminal for private jets. There's no security, and that's what the convenience is. There's no security. It's in and out. If you want to drive onto the ramp straight to your jet, you can. You know, but we have a concierge service there that will take care of anything you need if you're chartering a jet or if you're flying your private plane in. We have refueling and maintenance services, whatever. So there's a lot of different pieces to what we do. It's not just a jet charter company. But I'll never forget the very first day I came to work, get up to the office, and the first plane that flew in was like a King Air turboprop, flies in, and two guys in full tactical gear get out of this turboprop, and then a guy in federal prison shackles and jumpsuit gets out of this. They were transporting a federal prisoner, and they stopped to refuel at our FBO, and they let him go and use the bathroom.
Really?
They let this prisoner go and use the bathroom. I was like, what did I get myself into here?
Yeah.
But that's the only time I've ever seen a federal prisoner being transported.
Day one.
At our FBO. But
yeah.
That one must have been one bad dude, because I mean, full on SWAT team tactical gear, guarding the airplane and then guarding this prisoner. And that was an interesting experience.
I'm assuming you didn't go to the bathroom at the same time.
No,
so, yeah.
no. But it's cool. I mean, it's the one thing I didn't realize, because I'm a Southwest guy, I'm this is a different world for me. I'm not the guy that's hopping on a Gulf Stream, to go to Aspen every weekend. But there are people out there that do that, and I'm glad, because I've got a job because of it. But the one thing I never realized is the difference in the size of aircraft, from a light jet to a heavy jet, or a turboprop to a heavy, whatever it is. The size difference is unbelievable. If you go into the hangar, like some of these planes, like the wings are at my kneecaps, really low to the ground. The tires are this big, tiny, it's like, how do I trust this thing to fly me in the air at hundreds of miles an hour? It's crazy. But then you get up next to a Gulfstream or a Legacy, or we have a Challenger 300, which is like a super mid-sized jet, and they're huge. They're like, we have two Legacies that are basically repurposed commercial passenger jets, regional passenger jets. They used to fly 40 people, and they've gutted it, and now they fly like 12 or 13 people, in really fancy seats. And it's just those little things blow my mind every day. There's something new every day that's really interesting that I learn. And again, this is my first time into the aviation world, but it's kind of a nice reprieve from everything else that I do, because if I'm not announcing, I've got another side gig that we haven't even approached yet. With I've got a passion for golf, and we've started this side gig, but when I'm announcing, I'm either at the ballpark or I'm driving to Tulsa. I can't tell you how many hours a week I spend, especially during football and basketball season, I spend driving up and down the turnpike.
Well, now you got to get in one of those Embraer 300 Phenom or something, and just fly up to Tulsa.
Absolutely. If I had those privileges, yeah, that'd be sick. But it's I was really hoping for a light rail, a train or something that they build, so I could at least get some work done on my way up to Tulsa. But no, that's a great way for me. I think not last, not COVID year, but the year before, I announced, I think 160 or 170 events, and most of them were in the Tulsa area. I ended up putting 12 or 13,000 turnpike miles on my car. So it's a lot of turnpike, just a lot of Turner Turnpike time, but it's a lot of again, you see that hurdle as an opportunity. I can't tell you how many books and podcasts. I mean, and that's my time to decompress. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to deal with anybody else's, requests or whatever it is. I get to dictate how I spend that time. And I love listening to music, and all kinds of music, but podcasts, and not just self-wellness podcasts. I listen to crime podcasts and sports podcasts and whatever it is. Like, I just love to dive deep. History podcasts, I love history podcasts. I'm the type of guy where most nights after baseball games, I'm decompressing by laying on the couch and deep diving into Wikipedia pages, because of one thing somebody said one time during the day about, you know, the ancient Trojans or something,
Yeah.
and now I'm down the wormhole of ancient Trojans, and all the people that they conquered, and now I know want to know all the people they conquered, and how does this fit with like biblical history, and that's how my mind works. I'm probably ADHD, never been diagnosed, but it could be. And
or or just you have this natural curiosity, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll call it that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that decompression time I value so much because, you know, so much of what I do is, on a hot microphone, you've got to be on point at all times. That's one thing people don't realize. All it takes is one hot mic moment for me to lose all of my jobs that I love, you know. So I've got to be really careful. And if you've ever been in a production room or, and I'm sure, a coaching office is the same way. It's not like you probably don't want to bring your grandmother into those places most of the time because it's just a different world. And when I'm hearing that stuff in a headset or whatever, and I've got a hot mic to 10,000 people, it's just like that's a thin barrier between those two, and it's my conscience and my self-awareness of whether my mic is on or not. If I'm talking back on this microphone or if I'm talking on this microphone to the entire public or the entire audience. So
Yeah.
um
Because
I really value that time when I'm not on a microphone,
hmm
and don't have to talk to people in a public setting. So
yeah, and a lot of the events that you're doing, there's lots and lots of people that are at the games. So all it takes is a
yeah,
split second. So it is definitely having making sure that you know what you're doing. You're watching the game entirely, and you know what you're doing. So that is a big
yeah,
component.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So, real quickly touching on some of the stuff you're doing now, you're doing so many different games. And I think recently you had an opportunity to go to Nashville, right? For the Titans
I
job or
did,
something?
yeah. That was a cool experience. So, and again, this is an interesting profession. Public address is an interesting profession because there are so few people that do it well, do it and do it well enough. But there's also so few jobs that are, you know, that necessitate somebody at the highest level. I mean, you think about it, there's only 30 something NFL jobs, there's only 30 something MLB jobs, NBA, whatever. There's only a handful of guys that get to do that. And oh, by the way, some of those guys, like Paul Porter for the Orlando Magic, he also has other high level gigs. So like he's taking multiple opportunities away from guys like me. Not, I don't have any hard feelings against Paul Porter, but
Sure.
or who, Alan Roach is probably the greatest announcer of the modern era, and I've had the privilege of talking with Alan Roach a couple times. He does the Minnesota Vikings. He does the Super Bowl every year. He does the Pro Bowl. He does the NFL draft. He's kind of like the NFL's guy. And if you get a chance, go look up Alan Roach after this. And everybody that's listening as well, look up Alan Roach because he makes me sound like a baby girl. His voice it's so buttery. I love it so much. But when you're the best, everybody wants you, and you can kind of. I mean, it's like being. It's like acting. It's if you're an A-lister, everybody wants you. Scorsese and Tarantino, everybody wants to work with you. Well, if you're a C-list actor or whatever, you've got to go work for those gigs. So, yeah, Nashville was an interesting experience. It was, most of the NFL jobs will be publicized because they want to cast the widest net possible to find their person. And that's kind of the case with the Tennessee Titans. They posted online. I think I may have seen it on Teamwork first, but I saw it a few different places. But it was a pretty intensive uh, application process. And my philosophy is, if there's an NFL gig open, because there are so few of them, or NFL or NBA, I'm going to apply for it every time. I don't care who it is. Um, Bonus points if it's somebody, that I can feel like I can announce, that I could be a fan for, because growing up I was always a Dallas Cowboys fan, like everybody around here, until the Chiefs got good and people started jumping ship. I'm considering it as well, being
Yeah.
a frustrated Cowboys fan, but the Tennessee Titans have always been an organization I've looked up to. It's a family run organization. It's always been a family run organization, even back when it was in Houston, when they were the Oilers. I've always followed Derrick Henry's career. Back when he was like a sophomore in high school, I heard about this kid, and he was rushing for 4,000 yards a year as a sophomore in high school. And so I followed Derrick Henry for a long, long time, more than 10 years. And I've always said, when he was a senior in high school, I called it that he was going to be a Heisman. So I've always been a Derrick Henry fan, and I thought that'd be really cool. So I wanted to go ahead and apply. It was pretty intense. We had to do a live video stating why we wanted to be the Tennessee Titans public address announcer. We had to have like 3 minutes of audio clips, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're announcing a live game, you don't think to record yourself announcing a lot, or at least I don't.
Sure.
I'm so focused on just being in the moment and putting out the best product possible at the time. So, but I was able to scrounge up 3 minutes of audio, and then you have to have, a resume, which is not your regular resume. It's a public address announcer's resume. So I've got multiple resumes that I try to juggle. But yeah, I sent it in not thinking much of it, because usually whenever they cast one of these out there, they'll get 2,000 responses, multiple thousands of responses. Didn't think much of it. But lo and behold, I got a call back, and they asked me to come out to Nashville and try out in person, which was a lot of fun. Carolyn and I went out there. It was probably 2 months ago now, and we love Nashville. We got friends in Nashville that we actually met on our honeymoon, and they're just an awesome family. And so it gave us an excuse to go out and see them. But I mean, I go to Nashville and the chance I get. It's such a cool city. It's always, there's an energy in Nashville. People are awesome there. The food is unbelievable. There's live music literally 24 hours a day, and I just thought it'd be a really fun opportunity to maybe give us an excuse to go to Nashville 8 times a year rather than once a year. So, but we went out there, we did it. It was crazy. They had a film crews. They had like an MC. They filmed the audition like it was American Idol, because they had a live voting component if you were to make finalists. And I didn't, unfortunately. I was top 20, yeah, and didn't make finalists, which is fine. I assumed it was a long shot because, of the NFL announcers, out of the 30 guys that announce NFL games, maybe 2 of them commute to games on weekends. And it's guys like Alan Roach, who lives in Denver and flies to, and it's because they're the best, So I kind of assumed it was a long shot for me actually, getting an offer to be the PA announcer for the Tennessee Titans. And number 2, like, not being a lifelong fan. I'm a believer that that's not a necessity at all. I mean, I've announced for teams that I grew up hating, because it's a paycheck and it's experience. And I've convinced myself that. And I don't think that my product is any worse because of it, because of I grew up, disliking so-and-so or what team. Might be able to read through the lines there. But
Yeah.
but that's proof to me that I can do that. I don't have to be a fan of your team to give you the best product possible. So that was kind of my mindset going in, and it was an awesome experience. And and I got to knock another stadium off my list, Nissan Stadium, which is a big, beautiful, holds 65 or 70,000 people, right in downtown Nashville, right on the banks of the what is that, the Cumberland River right there, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and but it's gorgeous stadium, and it was nuts, but it was a great experience, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great story. Just taking a step, shooting your shot, like you said before, and giving opportunity, doing your best, and seeing what comes of it. You just never
Yeah,
know, and um, it's interesting right now. I think you've had all these experiences, and you're still very young compared to probably a lot of people in the industry. So
sure.
there's lots more ahead, for you as well. And so that's a big component of the future for you.
Yeah, that's one thing I've tried to convince myself of, is that I've got a long career doing this. God willing, I still have my voice in 20 years, which is not a guarantee. Things happen, and but God willing, I still have my voice. Like, I want to be doing this as long as I can. You think of a public address announcer, you think of the old guy with the big voice. You don't think of a 32-year-old kid, or and I think maybe in 10 years, if the Titans have an audition, maybe I've got a better shot, because I'm not 32 years old. I'm 42, and I've established myself more. And but even in the last 10 years, I've announced 1,200 games.
Yeah.
There's the experience and the opportunities are always there, and the bigger ones will come around. You have to realize that for every big event that you get, you have 100 high school or middle school or whatever, college events that aren't as big. I got to do the NCAA. I got to do March Madness when it was in Tulsa in 2019, which was an unbelievable experience. I may not ever get to do March Madness again in my life, so you just have to kind of cherish those moments and take advantage of them whenever they come around, because you don't know when they're going to come around. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is there any particular place like that would be the dream to be the PA announcer at?
um, yeah, I've thought about this a lot. There are a few different things I'd like to do, and not necessarily a specific place, but I want to do Olympics one day. Um, and I think the Olympics are coming back to the United States in 2028. So I've already got that in the works. I'm already trying to get my foot in the door there. And I really don't care. It could be gymnastics, it could be judo. I don't care what it is. I want to be a public address announcer for the Olympics. Because that's as close as I'll ever get to being an Olympian in anything, But I think that'd be awesome,
Oh, it would.
That's I'm a huge fan of the Olympics, and I'm so excited that they're coming back around, God willing. Things aren't looking great right now, but even like, just watching the Olympic trials is so exciting. And so that would be an experience I want to do. I would love to be the first tee announcer for a major golf championship. That one's a little bit tougher, because usually those guys are, members of the PGA or the USGA or whoever's hosting. They are like the executive team, and they don't care about, the vocal quality or how to pronounce names. And it drives me up the wall. It's insane to me that people are still ruining Victor Hovland's name, or Ricky Fowler, or there was a guy who called Ricky Fowler Ricky Flowers. It's like, what are you doing, man? Like, you've got this one job, and the most important part of our job is to get names right. Everything else comes secondary. You've got to get the names right. That's why there's pronunciation sheets. That's why you don't want. I've had the worst feeling in the world is having a mom come up to you and say you're mispronouncing a kid's name, whether it's my fault or somebody else's fault. If it wasn't on the pronunciation sheet, or the pronunciation sheet was wrong, that's the worst feeling in the world. But it seems like golf, the industry as a whole, doesn't value the same things I value in a first tee announcer. So, but that's a dream. I think a bowl game would be really cool. Maybe a playoff game, and that's I think that's pretty attainable. I think that will happen eventually. It's just a matter of what organization I'll get to work with, and kind of biding my time until that time comes. So, yeah, there are moments out there, there are events out there that I want to do. I think those are kind of my bucket list ones right now, though. And
Yeah.
then obviously, if Larry Reese ever retires, I'd love to be in Stillwater. To kind of end my career, I think would be really cool. Um, doing cowboy football and basketball.
Yeah. We'll have to have you back on when you're doing all that stuff. So,
Yeah.
one thing real quick I want to touch on too is you said you've got the little side gig that you're doing as well at the Red Dirt Golf Collective. You got a
Yeah.
podcast. So talk a little bit about that. How did that come about and what do you guys do?
Yeah. So we don't have a podcast yet, but we have a buddy of mine, Spencer Drury, who I worked at Carson Creek with growing up in college. He and I have been great friends ever since then, and he now lives in Edmond, just not too far from me, and we're golfing buddies. And I was the best man in his wedding, and I actually missed announcing Clayton Kershaw for the first time that night because I was the best man in his wedding. So I always held that over his head until I got an opportunity to announce Clayton Kershaw. So I can't hold it over his head anymore. But love the guy to death, and he's a much better golfer than I am. But we were golfing. We were up at Cimarron National in Guthrie last summer of 2020, and there's been a movement in the golf industry of younger, really passionate golfers who are interested in not just what's happening on the PGA Tour, but they're interested in golf course architecture and history, and kind of diving a little bit deeper into the game than what you see on Golf Channel on Sunday afternoons, and that has led to brands and publications like the Golfer's Journal, which is kind of it's high level journalism, really deep dives into the industry, really visually appealing, kind of a coffee table style publication. The Fried Egg is probably my go-to for golf industry knowledge. I mean, so knowledgeable, those guys. Andy Johnson and those guys. There's so many of these different groups that have popped up in the last few years, and have kind of formed their own brands for promoting the game of golf. Well, we saw an opportunity to do that specifically for the state of Oklahoma. People don't realize the rich history that Oklahoma has in the game of golf, and it goes all the way back to 1921, whenever A.W. Tillinghast created Tulsa Country Club, who A.W. Tillinghast, who was this really vivacious, he was a drunk is what he was, but he was a golf course architect from Philadelphia, just boisterous and loud and eccentric. And he designed these golf courses that have come to be some of the greatest golf courses in the world, like Wingfoot, who hosted the U.S. Open last year. And it turns out that we have two A.W. Tillinghasts. We've got Tulsa Country Club and Oaks Country Club, both in Tulsa. And people don't realize that we've got, that quality of golf course from somebody, otherwise you might not have heard of. But, he designed Wingfoot. He's designed all of these unbelievable golf courses, specifically in the New York area. But he came down here to Perry Maxwell was a pseudo native Oklahoman. He was born in Kentucky, but he was a banker in Ardmore. And the only reason he ever got into the game of golf is because he got a bad back from tennis, and his wife made him hang up his tennis racket and made him find another hobby. And so he built his own golf course on a pig farm in Ardmore, which turned out to be Dornick Hills, which was Perry Maxwell's first design. He went on to design Southern Hills, went on to redesign like half of Augusta National. And this is an Oklahoman,
Really?
who has, Buffalo Rock and Cushing and Oakwood and Enid and Dornick Hills and Southern Hills. And there's so many representations of his work in the state of Oklahoma. And he's a world-renowned golf course architect. And people don't know those types of stories. And so that's what we're kind of wanting to tell with this brand, with Red Dirt Golf Collective. And it's got, it literally started as a hobby, and we got 1,000 followers on Twitter within like a month, and it's been, people are just, if golfers are so passionate about the game of golf, especially in the area that they're from. They're very territorial, and we're kind of building on that passion, and kind of, hopefully creating a community of guys and girls who are, passionate about the game, passionate about Oklahoma, and passionate about moving both of them forward into the future. If we were able to leverage our brand to bring a full-time PGA Tour stop to the state of Oklahoma, how cool would that be?
Oh yeah.
Anybody that went to Southern Hills for the Senior PGA a few weeks ago saw how special that place was. And so we just want to tell those stories and tell the stories of the people behind those places. And there's some really good ones out there, and we're telling them, and it's a lot of fun. So.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So definitely, if any of the listeners pay attention to that, because that could be very, very cool to listen to. So that's awesome. Well, real quick, as we kind of finish up, I want to go through a little fire round for you.
Sure.
So I'll ask a few questions, or I'll say a word, and you can finish the sentence however you want to.
Okay.
So discipline.
I think discipline is the motivation to maintain your routine, especially when you're not motivated to maintain that routine. I think it's doing what needs to be done whenever, there are an infinite number of reasons or excuses to not do what needs to be done. Discipline to me, if you have a maximum potential, it's everything you do. Discipline is everything you do that either pushes you toward that maximum potential or pulls you away from that. It goes both ways. You can have good discipline, or you can have bad discipline. Discipline, it's like attitude. You can have a good attitude or a bad attitude. It's the application of that discipline in your routine to get you closer to where you want to go, to get you to that next level. And that's everything from, how you wake up, and I'm no expert at this. I'm not a good morning person, but I have tips and tricks that I've kind of taught myself or learned from other people who help me get through that part of the morning, so that whenever I show up to work, I'm ready to go to work. Because at the end of the day, your employer isn't paying you to have a bad day. I think that's one of the biggest, or one of the most prevalent pieces of advice that I've ever been given is, my employer doesn't pay me to have a bad day. They pay me to do what I'm good at and what they hired me for. They don't care that I'm grumpy, I didn't get all of my coffee in the morning, or that I was stuck in traffic or whatever. They pay me to get stuff done, and that's where discipline comes into play. I think it's discipline of mind, discipline of body, and obviously I don't go to the gym nearly as often as I should, but to stay healthy, I'm gonna have a family soon. And so I think it's, I want to be healthy, so I'm not leaving them out to dry one day, even down to things like, discipline to get your oil changed when you're supposed to. Discipline. If you don't fill up your tank with gas, you're going to run out of gas. Discipline is knowing that you have to have that in order to keep moving forward. So that's what I think of when I think of discipline.
Yeah, that's great. So, favorite vacay destination?
Oh, this is a good one. I've got a few. Number one, I'll say New England. Carolyn, my wife, when we were dating, she moved after she graduated from college. She moved up to Maine and worked. Her first full-time job was in Maine, And so that gave me an excuse to go up to New England and explore that area. And I was blown away. I mean, it was nothing like what I expected. You think of New England as a Midwesterner, and you think of people who are brash and, kind of cold and standoffish. That's not it at all. They are just like we are, except they're probably more honest than us. We as Oklahomans sometimes like to hide things behind a veil of politeness. They don't have that. They just tell you how it is, and I love it. It's so refreshing. The food culture up there is great. The culture is amazing. History, they've got history up there that we don't have in Oklahoma. Their history goes back multiple centuries rather than a century, which, as a history buff, I love. It's just beautiful. You ever go to New England in the fall? I mean, foliage time is unreal up in the White Mountains, or up, driving along I-95 in Maine. It's just beautiful. So there's that. And then we took our honeymoon a few months ago. We went to the Keys. We went to the Florida Keys, which was a blast. And I'd been to the Keys before, but not in like a real vacation setting. It was more of like a quick in and out tourist type deal. The Florida Keys are unbelievable, man. Key West is awesome, and I still get a bit of history there. And then we spent most of our time at a resort in Key Largo, and it was just the most relaxing place in the world. So loved that. And then Carolyn's sister lives in London, and we've gone over to London once or twice. And I really didn't know what to expect going over to London. When I say I'm a history guy, I love American history. I'm not much on. I know world history. I'm not passionate about it. Like, I don't care about kings and queens and who is popular in the royal family, whatever. Couldn't care less about it. But London was so fun. Loved it out there, and excited to go back. We're hoping to go back again this year. I don't know that we'll get it done, but with everything that's going on, but I love it out there.
Yeah, those are all good spots for sure.
Yeah.
The next thing is vision is.
I think vision is integral. It's an integral piece of, finding excellence where you're searching for excellence. I think, if you don't have vision and you're just blindly looking for success or excellence, it's never going to happen. You've got to understand where you're going, and you've got to be able to see what's in front of you to get there. If you don't see hurdles coming, that will ruin any momentum you have. I think you have to have that vision, not only to react to things that are coming, but to also be proactive in your planning, in the steps that you need to take, in your discipline, to get where you want to be.
Yeah, it all comes down to.
It all comes down to how bad you want it. I think that, and how much you're willing to prepare for it, whatever that is. If that's, a new house, if that's success in your work, if that's success in your marriage and family. We live in a world that's filled with so much apathy. I don't want to say laziness. They're incredibly motivated people all over the place, but they're also a lot of times very apathetic to circumstances around them. If it doesn't directly involve them, who cares? And I don't think that's a good way to live life. I think, being self-aware and being aware of your surroundings and others around you is really important. And so I think, you have to be able to, again, have the vision to see what's coming, to react to what's coming, to be proactive, and then also have the drive. It all comes down to having that drive to wanting it more, or planning for it more, or, preparing for it, whatever it is. I think it all comes down to that.
Yeah. Favorite announcing PA experience?
That's a tough one. You know, there are guys out there that have announced 10,000 events. And so I'm not saying I've announced a lot, but like 1,200 is a lot. And I was trying to go back the other day and think of all the different like notable athletes that I've announced. And I got a huge list and I couldn't think of, you know, even back to, you go watch high school basketball games in Tulsa, you know, dudes that are playing for Union or Booker T or Memorial or whoever it is. There are some studs out there who are now studs at the next level. I mean, Shake Milton, with the Philadelphia 76ers. There's some unbelievable athletes that I've been able to announce. But experience wise, March Madness 2019 was pretty unforgettable, especially getting to do it in Tulsa, where I grew up, was really neat. And they were stacked that year in that regional. I mean, we had, Buffalo, who was like, I don't know, 32-3 or something that year. Houston had a 30-win season and might have been the most athletic basketball team I've ever seen, that Houston team. Texas Tech, who went to the national championship game that year. Arizona State got in that year with, they won a play-in game, and so they were late to the party. But Lou Dort was on that team, so I got to announce Lou Dort. I mean, just so many different people I got to experience, got to announce and watch play. So March Madness was awesome. Opening day 2019 was another one that I thought of. That's when Clayton Kershaw was on rehab assignment, and he was opening day at Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark, and we've got Clayton Kershaw throwing, and there's like 13,000 people in the crowd. It was a really good crowd, full sellout, and he actually got the loss that day. But it was a lot of fun to get to announce Clayton Kershaw. And then I also got to I was also cast as an announcer in a Rocket Mortgage commercial with Ricky Fowler. He filmed a commercial in Stillwater at Carson Creek, and they asked me to come and be that first tee announcer for the commercial. And I could just spend 5 or 6 hours with Ricky and his wife and the whole production staff and see how a commercial is filmed. Not many people get that experience. That was pretty cool to see how a nationwide commercial was being filmed. So or a national commercial. So that was neat as well.
Yeah, lots of great experiences.
Yeah.
Winding down here, what is there a certain piece of best advice you've ever received?
It's a lot of advice.
Yeah.
I worry sometimes that we can be oversaturated with advice, whether it's good or bad. All the time you go onto LinkedIn, and that's all LinkedIn is a feed of advice. People telling you what's good, and I'm a victim of it as well. I love posting on LinkedIn because it's like the professional man's Facebook, and I go there for daily inspiration or to get those inspiring stories, whatever it is. But to me, a great piece of advice that I got, I don't even remember who said it to me, but it's advice about advice. It's to take advice in, take relevant advice in and pass it on. Take it in and pass it on. So many times we're competing with the people around us, whether it's work or sports or, socially. I mean, we compete socially all the time. Who's got the cooler car, who's got the bigger house, who's got, the prettier family, whatever it is, who's wearing the most designer clothes. There's so much competition in our life. And at the end of the day, we're all still here together. We're all still living, in this place together. And my actions will affect your life in some way. So if we flip that on its head and say, maybe life isn't as much of a competition as we think it is. Yeah, I may be out to get your job, but we work on the same team. We work for the same company. We're working toward the same goals. So take that advice in, whatever it is that you get, and pass it on. I think there's no point in retaining advice if you're going to be selfish and only use it for yourself, in my eyes, at least. So I love that little bit of advice. And then my Grandpa Harold, he always used to say, "There's no end to that Gallagher. There ain't no end to that Gallagher talent,"
Huh.
which, insert name here, but he always used to say that, and I love it because he passed away a couple summers ago, and the more I think about that line, "There ain't no end to that Gallagher talent," the more special it becomes, because essentially that's a green light to shoot for my dreams. The only end to that Gallagher talent is the bookend that I'm putting on myself. It's the constraints that I'm living by. If I want to go be an NFL announcer, I can make that happen. And just because I didn't get the Tennessee Titans gig doesn't mean there's not going to be another one that comes along next year or the next year or whatever. I think so many people get comfortable with where they are in life, and they're not looking bigger and better. I mean, Grant Cardone, love him or hate him, he talks about the 10x rule. It's whatever it is, think 10 times bigger than that. Go for that. Even if you fail, look where you are now. You're beyond your original goal, whatever. So that's a really, in Harold Gallagher's way of putting it, that's kind of, how I take that. There ain't no end to that Gallagher talent. So
Yeah, that's so great. I love that. This podcast is called Building Excellence. What does building excellence mean to you?
to me, excellence is not a destination. It's a journey. If it's a constant journey, and I think you can be excellent at something, but you'll never achieve excellence unless you're constantly pursuing it. I can be excellent at announcing, but what is excellent? What is that success for me? Is it where I am today? Yeah, I love where I am today, but I also want to continue to grow that. Do I want, is private jets booming right now? Yeah, there are a lot of people that are flying private jets, but we don't want to have one FBO. We want 5 FBOs. It's that constant pursuit, that constant journey of everything we've talked about: discipline and vision, and being self-aware enough to see those hurdles around you. I think so many people, especially in a world of sports where there's one winner and one or multiple losers, people see hurdles as failures, and that's not the case. A hurdle is a learning experience, because if excellence did end today, then yeah, that hurdle would be a failure. If you don't get over that hurdle, that's a failure. But that's the beautiful thing about it, is excellence doesn't end today. Excellence goes on forever. It's infinite. And even long after we're gone, there will be people behind us who are trying to fill our shoes and make our shoes bigger and better than we ever thought of it. So to me, that's what building excellence is constantly pursuing that journey, and loving the moment. Because if you don't love the moment, what are you doing it for?
Yeah, no, that right there, loving the moment and enjoying it, but also being focused on growth as a person in your journey of excellence on your own is really important. So, Jared, thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks for sharing your story. And like you just touched on, thanks for sharing all those experiences and how you've been able to continually build upon those things and get to where you are today. And it's going to be fun having you back on the show when you've continued to push through
Yeah, man.
and get to the places you want to be at. So thanks again.
Thanks,
If
Bailey.
someone wants to get in touch with you, is there a way to get in touch with you or
Yeah,
to
I
reach
mean,
out?
yeah, well, I'm on Twitter, and I'm happy to give my phone number, email address, but I'm on Twitter at Jared Gallagher. Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm on all I'm in marketing, so I'm on all the social media channels. Do that. My email is just jgallagher2188 at gmail.com. I'd love to talk to people, and love networking. Networking is like my favorite thing in the world, because I love hearing people's stories, and learning what they do, and learning about things that I don't already know about. I mean, finance, I suck at finance. Oil and gas, I don't know anything about that industry, but I know people who work in those areas, and they're so fascinating to me because, I don't know, it's just different worlds. There's so many guys who, I grew up with who we have the same education, but they applied it in such a different way, and I think that's just really fascinating. So yeah, reach out. I'd love to learn more about your story, and yeah, keep going, keep pursuing excellence.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jared. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bailey.